Besides the government-run Radio Cayman, listeners today can hear more than a dozen other stations on the FM band. There's Praise FM on 87.9, Magic FM on 91.5, Star FM on 92.7, K Country on 93.5, Gold on 94.9, Big Fish on 95.5, K Rock on 96.5, Island FM on 98.9, Z99 on 99.9, Rooster 101 on 101.9, Hot 104 on 104.1, Kiss FM on 106.1, and X 107 on 107.1. And there's even a Cayman weather radio station on 107.9. Perhaps it's time for a trip to the Caribbean, Jeff. What do you think?
Maybe so, Ray. I was in the Cayman Islands a few times, several years ago now, and I would love to go back again. Next week, Ray will be looking at some interesting aspects of radio broadcasting, specifically for German armed forces.
This week, a peace deal that took almost 40 years to put together.
Normalization with a wealthy neighbor with whom it shares one of its longest borders would really open up a lot of opportunities economically, diplomatically for the country.
Global tariff war.
Tariffs that we're talking about, and again, reciprocal. I think that the tariffs, there are some cases where they're a little beyond reciprocal because we've been abused for a long time as a country.
Join us now on The Voice of America as we explore the issues in the news.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lori London in Washington.
And I'm Scott Walterman.
Repercussions are still very much being felt around the world after an order from U.S. President Donald Trump to shut down, at least temporarily, the Voice of America and the other broadcast entities that are part of the U.S. Agency for Global Media, USAGM. Last week we told you about the closure of most of those services that began on March 15th. In the meantime, Germany's Deutsche Welle and France's France Média Monde, which operates Radio France International and France 24 TV, issued a joint news release on Monday saying they are alarmed by the U.S. administration's decision on the 15th of March to halt funding for American public international media. The news release said they stand in full solidarity with their colleagues at the USAGM. By weakening this crucial safeguard against disinformation and manipulation, the decision endangers global media freedom. The only remaining shortwave transmission site of USAGM in the United States is in Greenville, North Carolina. Apart from a few transmissions beamed to Africa, the vast majority of Greenville's broadcasts were for Radio Marti, which belonged to the Office of Cuba Broadcasting, which is part of USAGM.
Radio Martí, cubriendo toda la isla con las noticias más importantes de Cuba y el mundo. Radio Martí, por los 1180 AM, por nuestras frecuencias de onda corta y a través de martinoticias.com. Radio Martí, siempre contigo.
All of the Radio Marti shortwave frequencies from Greenville were off the air by Sunday, March 16th. But Radio Marti's 1180 kilohertz medium wave transmission from Marathon Key in Florida was still on. Not for long, though. By Monday, the 17th of March, it was off, leaving 1180 kilohertz clear for Radio Rebelde in Cuba. Recently, Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, says it terminated the lease for the Jorge Mascanosa building, headquarters for Radio Marti in Miami, saving U.S. taxpayers over $5.3 million by ending its $1.5 million annual lease on that building. The Miami Herald reported that on Saturday, March 15th, all full-time employees and some contractors at Radio TV Marti were placed on administrative leave with full pay and benefits. U.S. House of Representatives Congressman Carlos Jimenez, a Republican from Miami, told local NBC TV Channel 6 that he praised Doge's efforts to reduce spending, but he said killing Radio and TV Marti is one cut he's not willing to accept. I support revamping it, he said, but I don't support eliminating it. I think it's vital the people of Cuba get free information. On that fateful Saturday, March 15th, we received a message from a WaveScan listener in Cuba who asked not to be identified, saying, I spoke with some people in your country about the importance that shortwave, Radio Marti, and VOA Greenville have for Cubans and other people in the Americas. These decisions of the U.S. government are leaving us alone. Steve Herman, former VOA News correspondent, was suspended at the end of February and is being investigated for personal social media posts that the Trump administration says don't support official U.S. government policy. In response, he released a public reply last Saturday saying the de facto destruction of the Voice of America is nothing less than a betrayal of the ideals that gave birth to the institution and made it relevant throughout World War II, the Cold War, and in the decades after the collapse of the Berlin Wall. VOA has been a trusted presence with fairness and with balance, no matter which political party was in power. I had the honor, said Herman, of serving on the front lines in dozens of countries, reporting on TV, radio, and the web from conflict zones, covering historic summits, and in more recent years, navigating the complexities of global diplomacy as VOA's White House bureau chief and then its chief national correspondent. Destroying VOA, along with RFE-RL and Radio Free Asia, is a national security issue. These entities, funded by the American people, have been among the most effective instruments of American soft power, a bridge to those who may never set foot on our soil, but understand our values because they heard them in one of the dozens of languages in which we broadcast. To eliminate these institutions turns our backs on those around the world who have counted on us. It is to surrender a unique platform that no other country can replicate. There will be celebrations in the autocratic halls of power this weekend in Moscow, Minsk, Beijing, Pyongyang, and Tehran.
شنونده رادیو فردا هستید. بنیامین صدر هستم. وقت بخیر میگم به شما شنوندگان رادیو فردا در هر کجای جهان که هستید در این ساعت 22 و در غروب جمعه 24 اسفند 1403 برابر با 14 مارچ 2025 میلادی.
Radio Farda there, which is a service to Iran operated by Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty. Incidentally, Radio Free Asia is continuing to report news on its website with a much reduced staff. We'll keep following developments at VOA, Radio Marti, and the other USAGM stations here on WaveScan. As we mentioned at the beginning of today's program, as of today, WaveScan can now be heard each week on Reach Beyond Australia, beamed to India and Japan, and audible in many parts of Asia and the Pacific. For the next few weeks, we're going to be talking with Reach Beyond's new frequency manager, Greg Teague, who we met up with at the A25 HFCC Shortwave Frequency Coordination Conference in Abu Dhabi last month. Here's the first part of that interview. Greg Teague, we're talking to you here in Abu Dhabi at the A25 Global Shortwave Coordination Conference. This is the first conference you've attended by yourself, is that right?
Correct. I did fill in at Kuala Lumpur when Ken was sick, but this is the first time actually as frequency manager for Reach Beyond Australia.
We mentioned during our coverage of the last conference in Tashkent that Ken Lingwood was, is he retiring? What is his status?
No, he's retiring, and also that Ken has reached that marvellous milestone of being 80. He's got a bit of a bad knee, and I think the travelling is perhaps getting a little bit difficult for him, and plus it gives me a chance to do some frequency management work while Ken is still available to guide me and assist me and mentor me in some of the more finer techniques in frequency management.
So you were here coordinating for Reach Beyond Australia. Tell me, how many transmitters, how much transmissions do you have?
Yes, we transmit from our transmission site in Kununurra, which is at the very north of Western Australia. We have a site there that has 3 100 kilowatt transmitters, and we have 8 antennas, and those antennas generally point northwestward, but we transmit to Japan, which is plus 10 degrees, also right around to southern India, which is about 300 degrees. So anywhere in between that, we can normally have a reasonably good coverage with our suite of antennas.
I imagine with those facilities, in general, you have pretty good coverage of most of Asia.
Yes, that is our primary target, if you'd like to call it a target, but our listeners are primarily in India. That's one of our target regions where we have most of our listeners, but we have a very good listener support from Japan, from Korea, and also from Myanmar. We have had programs go to Vietnam in the past, but we don't currently have a Vietnam service. We have done a service to Indonesia, but we're not currently covering Indonesia. It varies with the demand and also our supporters.
Mm-hmm. Do you get reports from listeners in Australia itself?
Very rarely. Shortwave isn't popular, or not so popular among the general listening population. It's only from amateur listeners like DXs, and we sometimes or occasionally hear from them. But our antennas are very directional, and we have very little what you'd call rear radiation or back radiation, and sometimes people have actually reported listening to our programs from places like Tasmania, which is right down south of Australia, and also from New Zealand, but they are probably listening to the broadcast, which is actually going the full circle of the globe. Wow. So that's an interesting thought.
Wow. So how have you found frequency coordination for Reach Beyond? Do you have a lot of collisions?
We started out with about 4, and we was able to tidy them quite quickly. And when we come here, we had 2, but for some reason somebody else had moved, so then I only had 1 to worry about, and it was just handy that I had another frequency on hand that I was able to swap over. And actually, we don't have any collisions at the moment, but we've still got a few more days of coordination. It's been a fairly steep learning curve for me. It's one thing to have somebody sitting next to you and showing you, and then actually having to do it yourself. So but I get Ken Lingwood. He was very popular among the other coordinators here, and I've had quite a few people step up to assist me if I need it. So it's quite a friendly bunch, and I think out of respect for Ken, they're helping me a bit.
Well, we also at this conference in Abu Dhabi, we presented you with an award for Ken, the Aldrich Chip Award, right?
Yes. Ken is extremely proud of that, and he did actually receive an opportunity to come here to Abu Dhabi to pick it up himself, but but he declined because people were organising an 80th birthday party for him almost at the same time. So he had to make that choice.
Well, that only comes around once in a lifetime. So
well, that is true. It's a marvellous achievement, and Ken's been very dedicated in his work for Reach Beyond Australia, and he's been doing it for about 16 years, and in that time we've had very successful broadcasting and coverage under his guidance.
Now, Greg, you're based in Adelaide, right?
Yes, that's right. Adelaide's in South Australia. It's the capital city of South Australia, and it's quite low down in the main part of Australia. An interesting fact about Reach Beyond, it's virtually run by volunteers, except the CEO and the secretary and a few people, and they get minor type payments. But our head office is in Melbourne. Ken Lingwood is based in Brisbane. I'm based in Adelaide, and our media manager is based in Perth. And our transmission site is in northern Western Australia, but through email and other ways we get along very well.
How long have you been with Reach Beyond, Greg?
Yeah, it's actually an interesting story because I'd heard about this radio station called HCJB, and when I retired at age 55, which is actually 10 years ago now, my wife and I were making a trip up to the top of Western Australia, the Kimberley area, and I said to my wife, I've got a transmission site up there, I'd like to go and have a look at it. So I made contact with the people in Melbourne and discovered that it's now called Reach Beyond Australia. And after talking to the CEO, he invited me, call in to the transmission site and just have a look around and see what you reckon. And over a month or so later, in our travels, we went into Reach Beyond expecting to only either stay a few hours or a day or so. And we were so amazed with the setup there. We stayed 3 weeks volunteering among many other volunteers, because the whole site was actually built by volunteers, and just put together with materials that were either found or bought very inexpensively, or that it had been brought over from Quito in Ecuador. So from then on, that was 2015, and then I was very interested to support them with just normal sort of volunteering work. And the CEO, Dale Stagg, asked me would I be able to assist Ken in doing the remote monitoring work. We call it the RMS monitoring. And so it took me a little while to get up to speed with that. And ever since then, I've been working closer and closer with Ken. And then, and now they've asked me to take over as frequency manager. And I'm still doing the RMS work, and so it's an amazing organisation that's basically run by people who just love the organisation and what it does.
That was Reach Beyond Australia Frequency Manager Greg Teague speaking to us at the HFCC A25 conference in Abu Dhabi, United Arab Emirates. We'll continue that conversation next week. We end WaveScan today with music from the Cayman Islands, a song called Cayman Kind.
Another cloud blue perfect day. A warm breeze from the ocean breeze blows your troubles away.
Thanks for listening to WaveScan, the international DX program, researched and written in Indianapolis by Dr. Adrian Peterson, and in Los Angeles by Ray Robinson. Next week, German Army Radio. We'll get back to the HFCC A25 conference in Abu Dhabi and our Japan DX report from Yukiko Tsuji. WaveScan is now heard weekly in the Americas from WRMI in Florida, across Asia on Reach Beyond Australia, on Voice of Hope Africa from Zambia, and in Europe on IRRS Italy. Please send reception reports directly to any of those stations. Podcasts of this program are available through wavescan.podomatic. That's PODOMATIC.com. Your comments or suggestions are always welcome. Just email Ray or me using the address wavescan@yahoo.com. I'm Jeff White at WRMI Shortwave in Okeechobee, Florida. Till next week, good listening, everyone.
The sun is up, and it's rising. The sun is up, la la la, la 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 la
Thank you for tuning to Reach Beyond Australia. Join us again tomorrow at 22:30 UTC or 7:30 AM in Japan on 17650 kilohertz in the 16-meter band.